This week's episode is brought to you by Melissa and Urple420. Thank you, Melissa and Urple420. It's with the generous support of listeners like you that keeps our small team of reality hackers typing furiously away at their cryptic keyboards and reverse engineering the primordial signal of divine information into four-dimensional hieroglyphics we vocalize into auditory hallucinations for you and your army of furry minions. If you'd like to support the show, or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you instantaneous access to our entire library of extended episodes for your binging pleasure, but I'll even send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our cover art guaranteed to connect whatever you want to the egregore of this show, and also clandestine access to our super secret Discord server where Big Chungus is kept in cryogenic hypersleep. If interfacing with the virtual subconscious of Big Chungus sounds intimidating, or perhaps you just want to save your $5 for the grocery store-sized bag of M&Ms, but you still enjoy the show, please consider giving us a like, subscribe, share, or even telling it to one of your strange friends that won't mind that you listen to a show about tarot cards. If you'd like to receive a tarot card reading from yours truly, if you subscribe at the $20 tier, I'll owe you one for each month you stay subscribed. On this week's show, we cut straight to the bleeding heart of the lovers of the tarot and dissect the matrimonial twins to understand the deeper meaning of the card, its etymological rabbit holes, the Orphic egg, what it means in divination, what it has to do with love, ceremonial magic, its abundant use of traditional Christian symbolism, and where it all fits on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. In the extended show, we unveil the card's deeper themes by exploring the references to Grecco-Roman mythology with Castor and Pollux, the twin-faced Janus, and its zodiacal association with Gemini. As usual, we find ourselves geeking out on the card's exceedingly clever use of gematria, its Hebrew letter association of Zayin, and its roots in Egyptian hieroglyphics. Thank you, and enjoy the show. We had a phrase in college between all our roommates, and it was, everything is a series of tubes.
Oh, the internet is a series of tubes.
What isn't?
But that's what I'm saying is our language naturally, by the way that it works, the semantics of our language, it basically draws you into metaphors constantly that you have to reference back, oh, what's the source of this metaphor to understand. Like, I don't know if you ever watched like an anime, even a manga, it doesn't really make sense because you don't have that cultural reference of what the metaphor is.
Like how in science we have atoms, which just mean uncuttable.
But they are, though.
Yeah, they are.
You can cut them, but it only lasts for like milliseconds.
And if you do it with a neutron, you get a catastrophic emission of energy that you could drop on cities and stuff.
Or utilize to charge all the electric vehicles on the road now.
Yeah, whatever. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we do more than just cringe whenever somebody says they're a Gemini. Nay, we illustrate in razor-sharp detail the menagerie of symbols between the twin pillars of Gemini's zodiacal glyph, as we stride brazenly through the gates of Eden to walk amongst Adam and Eve once again in the lover's card of the tarot. I'm your host, Hack Rabbit, also known as Luke Madrid. I'm joined this week by the Mariner of Mysteries, Mari-sama.
Yo, what's up?
The Metal Maitreya, Malachor 5.
I don't even know what a Maitreya is.
And the Harbinger of Holy Fire, Heka Astra.
Hello.
Now, this is my favorite tarot card.
Literally say that every episode.
No.
No.
It's got a lot going on. It's got angels, it's got snakes, it's got fruit, it's got boobies.
It's got fire.
It's got fire.
And it's your card.
Yes, if you're a Gemini, this is your card.
Oh, man, I'm a Gemini rising, so it makes sense.
In the verdant, untouched beauty of the primordial Garden of Eden stands the first lovers, Adam and Eve, standing naked and innocent beneath the shade of two trees. Behind Adam flames the Tree of Life, glowing with spiritual fire, his gaze falling upon the beauteous unclothed splendor of his beloved wife, Eve, who is framed by the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lush with enticing fruit, entangled with a sly serpent whispering in her ear as she stands transfixed upon the angel of the Lord, obscured to Adam upon a veil of clouds, shining like a halo behind the red-winged angel is the mighty crown of the sun, beaming its fiery rays from azure sky which encircle the holy mountain, standing tall and majestic in the distance. These are the lovers of the tarot, and they stand for not just love shared between lovers, brothers, and friends, but between humanity and God, even while subtly hinting at the chains they will share upon the devil's throne later in the deck. Associated with the constellation Gemini and the Hebrew letter Zayin, meaning sword, the twins, as they are sometimes also known, represent the chemical wedding of the alchemical mysteries. But to get us started, what is the divinatory meaning of the card? According to A.E. Waite, the lovers represent attraction, love, beauty, trials overcome, but in reverse, failure, foolish designs, and in some cases, a lover's quarrel, frustration between marriage people.
Spouses.
Spouse battle.
I think in general, it just means, in one word, just relationships in general. The two separate parts, are they together? Are they not? What's going on?
Oftentimes in a reading, the lovers pertain to making a conscious decision, choosing something with intentionality. This makes sense in terms of marriage because it's often said, with some level of wisdom behind it, that choosing who to marry yourself to is the most important decision you will ever make. This also makes sense in line with the more esoteric meaning of the card, which speaks to the idea of discernment and, by extension, skillful separation. After all, choosing one thing often implies rejecting or cutting oneself off from other possibilities. This is also why infidelity is most often referred to as cheating. In terms of religious symbolism, this is hinted at in the card by the inclusion of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which, according to exoteric religion, are why the vast majority of us are stuck slaving at our jobs all day long, having been booted from the garden for choosing to eat the forbidden fruit which Elohim strictly forbade. After all, cheating does not necessarily include sex, but as we will discuss, to know something in biblical Hebrew often does imply sex, which shares an intimate relationship with death. For these reasons, the sword from the Hebrew letter attribution is an appropriate symbol pertaining to knowledge, duality, discernment, and ultimately death. Often, to know something both inside and out requires dissection by the blade, even if the sharpness of the blade belongs entirely to the mind, which itself is a tool of separation bound by dualities. If we look to the Golden Dawn title of the card, Children of the Voice Divine, the lovers can represent using your conscious awareness to look into the unconscious or the intuition in order to find guidance. We see this represented symbolically on the card, but we'll get there. So sharpen those blades and polish your spectacles because it's time for an etymological geek out. Who's ready for etymology time?
Yay!
I like etymology.
Me too.
Same. I always, if we don't bring it up.
I was surprised to discover during my research that the use of the term lover almost totally evaporated between 1940 and 1980 because of its vague, antiquated, and suggestive nature. However, it has slowly been on the increase since then. Lover, as one might imagine, comes from, well, love, which has a Proto-Germanic root and stems back to the Proto-Indo-European lube. Liub, I'm not sure how to say it, which means care, love, or desire. As such, the modern German Liebe for love has changed little in pronunciation or meaning from its ancient root. Its use as a euphemism for sex goes all the way back to the 1500s, so it would be accurate to say its meaning and connotation has changed very little since ancient times. Okay, Mara, you get to read this question.
But what about the weird usage in the game of tennis? What does that mean? Like, where did that come from?
Strangely, its use in tennis refers to no score, and this has to do with the zero's resemblance to an egg, as l'oeuf means egg in French. In fact, it's still common to refer to a zero in sports as a goose egg. As we will discuss, this links up to the use of the Orphic egg in the Thoth edition of the Lovers, and, stranger still, the mythology of Leda, which also relates directly to the mythological Gemini twins, eggs, and Zeus's poor treatment of women. Among other titles, sometimes the Lovers are referred to as the twins. The word twin comes from the Proto-Indo-European dwisno, or dwi, meaning double, and is also the root of the English two. Modern words like dubs, deuces, twinsies, and duos, and twine don't stray far from this root either.
If you think of the word marriage or to marry and how it relates to the name Mary, as in the Virgin Mary, you might start wondering if there's a possible link there, and there is. Both her titles of Virgin Mary and Mother Mary are related to this, the word matrimony being being the state or ceremony of being married, it finds its etymological roots in the Latin matrimonium as a combination of mater meaning mother and monium being action, state, or condition. So essentially, the sacrament of holy matrimony is the action of making one into a mother.
My old lady.
Girl, you'll be a woman soon. As we will discuss, this is even coded into the Thoth edition of the Lovers card through careful use of gematria.
So the focal point of the marriage is in the acquisition of a wife, traditionally a virgin. And you could think of this as being a metaphor for every virgin that is wed being an avatar of the Virgin Mother. If you look at the word marriage, it relates to marry, M-A-R-R-Y, meaning to fit together, meet, or combine. It comes from the Latin root maritare, which means to wed, marry, or give in marriage, and it's related to the noun maritus, meaning a married man or husband. So in other words, someone who takes a wife, the title going to the man. The name Mary primarily means sea. It does also mean star, star of the ocean, or sea of bitterness, but its most long-standing association seems to be with the sea in general. Just as we call someone who takes to the seas a mariner, relating to the taking of a mother, the womb, or water bearer, we called someone who takes a wife maritus, as it is she who will receive him just as the ocean receives those who sail upon her.
Ooh.
Hence, to be united in holy matrimony, as in mother, womb, likewise focuses its roots on the implied receiving and binding which takes place in the womb.
That's why right when you get married, you have to throw the bride in the ocean.
Huh?
I just made that up. I'm sorry. Do animals ever get married, or is this just a human thing?
No, actually, some do. Some forms of marriage, like rituals, do exist in nature, like with Adelie and Gentoo penguins. The males of these particular species will search the beach for the perfect rock, and once they find the right pebble, they present it to a potential mate. If the female accepts the little stone, they start building a stone nest together and form a lifelong monogamous bond.
That's what humans do. Hey, here's this shiny rock. Let's go collect some rocks together.
That's pretty much it. So those kinds of bonds do occur in some species, though generally the proposal is more commonly a sultry display of how pretty the boys are or how well they can dance.
Let me show you my pics.
The Adelie and Gentoo penguins are pretty different in that they use rocks. But anyhow, humans, on the other hand, have gone through an array of cultural norms regarding relationships, especially once they figured out that it was the male's semen that plays a part in making a baby.
It does?
So in ye olden times, it was generally virgins being married to each other. So we see the symbolism of purity and innocence pop up in this card's archetypal symbolism quite a bit, especially in the earlier versions of the card. Some of the older decks named this card marriage instead of the lovers, though as we'll come to discuss later, the actual consecration of the marriage occurs later in the tarot.
There's usually a clergy person or hierophant in most versions of the card, which we might argue is an antiquated religious form of eugenics. You can't hump unless the priest says you can.
So when did people start getting married?
Genesis.
Well, that makes some sense.
Well, once humans figured out that man plus woman equals baby, it created a kind of obligation to provide, as well as the concept of heirs to property. And this made sense for both male and female when combined with the evolutionary steps from the nomadic lifestyles. As hunter-gatherers started to settle down and become more involved with established agriculturally based civilizations, the need for a more stabilized arrangement of the family unit arose. More permanent housing provides security from the elements. It requires upkeep, the providing of sustenance to those in the house, as well as defining just who exactly would live in the house. Who is family? Well, that dude's semen got that chick pregnant. We know that.
It's interesting that it corresponds with sedentary lifestyle, which, as we've discussed quite a bit recently on the show, had to do with humans having enough discernment to figure out how to stockpile wealth and to trade things and live at home in their own house.
The birth of civilization as we know it. While some of the most ancient myths involving gods and their wives have existed basically since myths began being written down, like those of ancient Egypt and Sumeria, the oldest actual recorded marriages from Mesopotamia around 2350 BC, and the practice of marriage was adopted by ancient Hebrews, Greeks, and Romans alike, albeit with their own cultural versions of it.
If you go by that metric, it's really not that old.
I mean, that's the first actual writing down of a human marriage, which would probably coincide with when people started actually writing shit down.
So maybe it had to do with the first lawyer, because this was like the first marriage contract. People have been living together for a while now, and probably humping too.
So marriage became a widespread culturally important ritual that ensured the legitimacy of a biological heir. Being that the bride was most highly prized as a virgin, this meant the marrying off of children as soon as they reached puberty, generally between 12 to 14 years old. Now, because these were child marriages, it was something that was arranged by the parents. Obviously, this ties in really closely to political arrangements, dowries, and essentially a kind of child slave trade with parental consent.
Like child actors today.
Interestingly, if I'm not mistaken, the notes of this practice still exist today, with the marriage custom of asking the father for the bride's hand in marriage. The parental consent.
I always wondered why that ever became a thing.
Well, it's like once they figured out, sex makes the baby, they wanted to make sure that it was going to be their baby. And the only way to do that is to make sure that that person only has sex with them. And the best way to do that is with a virgin. So it's math.
You don't even really have to ask someone to marry you. You can just ask their dad and they'll decide for them.
That's how it was in a lot of cultures. And ultimately, in many cultures, it became so important to ensure a legitimate heir that this meant a one-sided binding of a female to a man, as it was in Greece. What the female wanted was of little importance to many ancient cultures, with the concept of polygamy being embraced, but only for the man. So he could take several wives to ensure legitimate heirs, but the wives were bound solely to him. It seems also that there were obvious issues with divorce in many of these ancient cultures. Often in places where divorce was not sanctioned, we see that multiple wives were being given the stamp of approval.
That's when you throw them in the ocean.
Oh, man. But despite this, marriage in ancient cultures wasn't always so unromantic. There are many examples of love poetry between starstruck lovers that do exist. And some of these examples come from ancient Egypt, which show just how lovers felt about each other. And these poems and their expressive emotions highlight how love was still a culturally important element to the marriages. And they did, in fact, play a role in their choosing of a mate.
That's kind of reassuring, honestly.
So it wasn't all just, loveless arranged marriages. There obviously were a lot of ancient people that fell in love with each other and married each other. And this is at least true for the common Egyptians that didn't marry for political alignment. So you'll see this happen with more the common folk, obviously, than with royalty, which is expected to marry for political purposes. And Egypt was a bit of an anomaly for its time, since women actually had rights as wives and, generally speaking, had equal rights in society. They could own property, work trades, and even choose to get a divorce. And all of these things obviously made them heathens to some other cultures.
I think when the colonizers and missionaries came to the continental, what is now called the United States, they were horrified to see that women could just, if they were being treated poorly, just throw all the dude's stuff out of the teepee and be like, fuck off, guy.
Your shit's on the lawn, come get it.
I'm not entirely certain how it was for some other cultures, but in Egypt, marriage was fairly simple. It basically happened when one person decided to move in with the other.
Aw.
A domestic union.
Eventually, they did start making marriage contracts that provided protection of both parties, should they decide to divorce. And while these were legally binding contracts, they didn't necessarily involve the stamp of approval from the church or state.
Whoa.
It's basically a note being like, if I screw you over, you aren't really going to be screwed over. You're covered, and vice versa.
So the marriage contract is fairly old.
Yes.
That's interesting. It makes sense with some of the symbolism we'll talk about as we go on.
So marriage only seems to have become a state-sanctioned religious affair with the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, which really should come as no surprise. The institutionalization of the wedding ceremony required that it be blessed by a priest to be recognized as legitimate and legal.
Eugenics.
The one upside to this was that it actually did improve the treatment of wives in Rome by requiring that sexual fidelity applied to both parties, that man respect his wife, treat her fairly, and that divorce was forbidden, so he couldn't just abandon her or toss her in the ocean, like you said.
Good looking out.
And while this was technically an improvement of conditions for the wife, the church did still hold fast to the declaration that the man was head of the family unit and that the wife should abide by his wishes. So essentially reinforcing the notion of the wife as a form of property.
Yeah, that's pretty dehumanizing.
Yeah, it's just basically like treat your property better.
It's like, yeah, there's a great relationship, it's great, but you actually don't get any of the benefits of it if your husband doesn't want you to. Okay, later. You're married.
Yeah, and that's really the root of what modern marriage came to be. Marriage has only really started to change in the last 50 years. It was largely like this for pretty much all of its history since institutionalizing it.
Yeah, like women used to be basically cattle that you would sell to the man that wanted to marry her, and he would take care of her as if it was like a cow in his barn.
Yeah.
And it's part of the property. So if like a farm was damaged by an act of God, quote unquote, a storm or something like that, then you get reimbursed for the property that you own. You weren't like your own person. It was just that you were bonded to that person and you had no autonomy of your own.
That's largely how it was for Hebrew, Greek, and Roman marriages. In fact, the concept of non-consensual sex in a marriage wasn't even given serious consideration until the 1970s in America. Up until that point, the general consensus was that the wife wasn't capable of being raped by her husband since she was considered his property.
Yeah, that's some sick shit.
So like I said, marriage has changed a lot in like the last 50 years compared to what it was throughout history. So by changing the naming of the tarot card from marriage to the lovers, it seems as though there was an acknowledgement of how this card was not inherently limited to a particular set of beliefs or morals that may or may not be sanctioned by state or religion, but rather a natural occurrence and interplay of these pairings of energies in nature. And this is not sanctioned by a ruling body of government or beliefs, but by the nature of God itself.
So now that we've discussed marriage a little bit, what about the symbolism in the tarot card itself?
Well, at the very top in the Thoth deck, we can see what appears to be the Roman Cupid flying blindfolded at the top. And Cupid's Greek counterpart is Eros, god of desire and love, son of Aphrodite. And he was actually considered in the earliest Greek myths to be a primordial god who played a role in the cosmos coming into being by drawing the primal forces of the universe together, according to Hesiod. More specifically in these myths, Eros, with his beautiful shiny golden wings, was immaculately birthed from the Orphic egg, after which he proceeded to have sex with the chaos in the depths of Tartarus, and out of which the human race was born.
Oh, yeah.
So according to the Roman tragedy Phaedra, Eros bids the gods leave heaven and dwell on earth in borrowed form.
Yeah, like this piece was so sweet. You guys got to come get some of this.
I mean, you can see how this ties into Adam and Eve on the tarot cards. But typically, Eros was portrayed as a handsome and often naked young man sporting wings and sexual prowess. Eros's name actually means love or desire, and in some of the myths, the primordial Eros was also believed to have incarnated as Dionysus.
As we've learned, Dionysus was a fun dude.
It's true. Later on, Eros would adopt the symbols of the lyre or the bow and the arrow, which we still refer to today as Cupid's arrow of love or being struck by Cupid's arrow. And these were golden arrows of Eros that were known for their potent powers of inducing love and affection to any struck by them. And even the gods weren't immune, with the exception, of course, of virgin goddesses.
It's infatuation or puppy love, from what I've understood.
Well, as we learned in the Hierophant episode, this power could be weaponized by the gods to the point where they make your wife hump a steer.
It's true.
I also couldn't help but notice the tools that Eros plays with, the lyre, the bow, and the arrow. Those are symbols of the sun and the moon, respectively.
Yep.
I also think it's interesting to note here that in the myth of Eros, he falls in love with the beautiful Psyche, whose name means soul or spirit, and together they have a daughter, voluptas or hedone, meaning physical pleasure or bliss. And it's essentially like love plus soul equals physical bliss.
That's hot.
It's like that David Bowie song,
I've only had that stuck in my head for a week.
Soul Love.
Yeah.
At some point, Eros came to be depicted satirically as a chubby, blindfolded infant, which inspired the cherub depictions of the Renaissance era.
That's gross.
Yep.
In a lot of Renaissance paintings, the cherubim were represented by basically babies or toddlers, like little fat children, with either angel wings or butterfly wings. And that is actually a falsification of what that entity is supposed to look like. And it's translated through because these paintings came from the Renaissance in Italy. And Italy already had this iteration of Cupid being a baby with wings, a little diaper on to keep him, family friendly, PG-13. And he had a bow and arrow that he would strike love into your heart. It's kind of interesting to see how all of these mythologies and symbolism plays into our pop culture that we see in media and art around us.
It's a little bit of a satirical play on the innocence. He's also kind of a trickster, right? But he's kind of innocent in his tricksterness.
Playing a game, very playful.
Yeah, he plays like a child child, but he's not a child. It's a God energy.
All I have is my love of love, but love is not loving.
Yeah, we usually will see them on Valentine's cards and, with your flower setups that you might see on the street for sale during Valentine's Day. But you hardly ever see him blindfolded in what you can buy at the store. And I think that's a very interesting thing to have, in the artwork and the, depiction of him, because it's almost like there's a blind desire to unify opposites. It's like, we don't know why, but we want our HGA, and our HGA wants us. God wants to be personified in a human body, in a human form, or an animal form. There's just like some hidden nature in the powers that they want to mix things up and get the party going, so to speak.
So you're saying like a blind intuition.
Well, love is blind, but
Totally.
It's interesting also that justice is blind, is the woman that is blindfolded that holds the scales. And, to say that you don't know when this is going to strike. And Eros was also considered in Greek texts and colloquialisms to be puppy love. It's an infatuation, an obsession with something. And it could be a relationship or even an erotic relationship. And that's where eroticism comes from. That's the root name of it.
Yeah, Eros.
It makes sense because our hearts don't really choose who to fall in love with. It seems like it's completely random.
Yeah, totally. That's a side of that blind desire for unification of opposites that we can actually feel in an emotion. So when we talk about such things, it's kind of like, wait, what? Like, that has nothing to do with the card. It's like, well, that's the art. That's what that means. Like this dude with the arrow pointing it somewhere. He don't care. So, and he's up on the top of the card pointing it down. So he's trying to bring what's up there where he's from down to earth into the lover's energy on earth. And the fact that we have a bowman here and there's a bow and an arrow, it's on a card that is literally about like twins or a couple of like things. It links this card directly to its twin card in the tarot, the art card. And we might talk about it again in this episode, but that's another part of the message of this card, is that there's deeper underlying alchemy going on. And Crowley and astrologically, Gemini and Sagittarius are related because they are on the other side of the map from each other.
Also reminds me of twin flames, which you hear in New Age stuff is like a soul twin that you have. And a lot of people believe that that should be their lover, but it doesn't always work out that way. It could be a teacher. It could be somebody that you learn from. So it's not always a love strike from Eros. It has to do with a relationship.
It's like when people say they have a relationship with God. Commonly, it's said you are marrying your HGA when you attain knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel. You marry that force and you devote your life. And then I can skew that into like some Hindu stuff with Hanuman, and he gets his power from his devotion to love his opposite, and that's why he's so strong, is because it's his love and devotion. There's another interesting thing about Cupid and his bow setup. He's got his quiver with him, and on that quiver in Greek it says the word thelema, of course, on the Thoth Dex art. Thelema again means will, and this has a lot to do with what arrows are about. It's symbolic of your will, directed will,
Divine will.
totally.
This is an interesting inclusion to put on Cupid, having the word thelema on the quiver, because Cupid is associated with the force of Eros, which is sensual and erotic, but it comes together with agape, godly or divine love, through the word thelema, which can manifest as either or both, a foundational concept for the religion of thelema, for which, of course, the religion is obviously named. For this reason, Aleister Crowley placed thelema on Cupid's quiver.
Yeah, and agape would mean love in Greek.
It's a different kind of love.
Essentially, the difference is agape is divine love and eros is physical pleasure, bliss, love. And these are coming together into one symbol on this card.
Because thelema can be both. You get to have your cake and eat it too, which is the gospel of maybe the whole religion.
Well, it's like a higher love because it's a natural attraction, which is Eros, combined with agape.
You could kind of think of it simply like if you look at virtues and sins, it's love and lust uniting as one.
Yes.
Under the will of God.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, because, this symbol of the arrow is, like I said, directed will. And that's important if you're trying to reach for those upper echelons of agape, like that divine love. Like if that's your target, you have to stay on it and faithful and follow your own religious practice or belief system. Because if you contradict yourself, then you're not in love with it. You're cheating on your oath. So that's part of the way that you don't get distracted by what things simply are, right? Like, because you're so devoted to something else that the stuff that's right in front of you, it doesn't infatuate you on the same level that your directed will is, for that ultimate goal of divine love.
I like how you pointed out earlier, too, that the arrow of Cupid is pointed downwards. Like, this is happening in a manifesting on Earth kind of way. And the twin card for Sagittarius, for the art card, it's an arrow that would be ascending. So you can kind of think of this like the directed will and love is manifesting, and then the reuniting of it, ascending, would be the other card.
Absolutely.
So A.E. Waite points out that Cupid is a symbol that represents love beginning, not love fulfilled, while many might also point out that Eros is linked to fate, or fiercely reject that concept entirely. I think it's helpful to consider his primordial union with chaos, and the chaotic, blind nature in which both love and what we might call divine will or thelema may manifest.
In the religion of thelema, there's a strong concordance between the idea of chaos and the all, which are considered cognate to Pan, and even sometimes referred to poetically as Father Chaos, or even Satan. Well, this sounds antinomian and edgelordy as hell. The general concept is that one's divine and even sensual desire to attain union with the all, or God, is the soul's birthright. The operative idea being, it's okay and even good to feel both in love and in lust for God. Even in traditional Christianity, a person who feels wed to God might even refer to Christ as their bridegroom, a wholesome, Christianized version of the same idea. In both thelema and Christianity, this union is thought to be attained through the sacrifice of the individual ego, with the former representing this as the pouring of one's blood into the cup of Babylon, and the latter being reborn in Christ.
Or like nuns or monks, they dedicate their lives to serving that entity because they are so in love with it.
Except in thelema, you don't have to do the Christian side hug.
And you don't have to like literally marry Christ so you can't fuck again.
You can hug with your mouth in thelema.
And your butt.
Oh yeah.
Oh snap.
If you're enjoying Diablo 4 as much as we are, the insignia of the Cathedral of Light, the clergy of the Diablo universe, features a drop of blood issuing from the sun falling into a chalice, which is probably a clever wink and nod to this exact universal religious concept.
Oh, yeah.
We should do a Diablo episode.
Okay. Goodbye. You should do it when I'm on vacation.
Even in the secular world of modern dating, the interrelated nature of erotic love and divine love enters into the popular lexicon with the phrase, no strings attached, which seems to indicate that, as default, the two usually come together as a packaged deal, at least somewhat. In the wise words of the philosopher Calvin Brodus,
You don't love me. You just love my doggy style. My favorite.
I ain't trying to hear what he's saying, because you know I love you, right, baby?
You don't love me, you just love my doggy style.
So also in the Thoth deck, there's the hooded Hierophant-like figure that appears almost like he's pulling the strings of the lovers. And I think this also represents our thelema or divine true will as relating to the playing out of what we think of as fate, like some force from above pulling the strings.
the Hierophant looks a bit like a marionette controller type person.
Yeah, it's hard. He looks both Hierophant and Hermit-y. But much like how some people say you don't choose who you fall in love with, there's a sense of some kind of higher power at work with the divine will. And we might remember the love under will part of the thelemic axiom and understand that ultimately the driving force of divine will is indeed love, but that our understanding of why it manifests as it does may be occulted from us. This fuel is what we might call the divine fire, a driving force we can easily relate to sexual potency, though its meaning is more than just physical sexuality.
That puppet string puller stance he's in, that's actually in Crowley's Book of Thoth. He explains that he's doing the sign of the Emperor, and I think that's the Horus part of the formula. And this is like somebody who's rending the veil, and they're opening up the curtains or whatever into the magical temple. They're initiating the whole process, so to speak.
For people who don't know, this is an actual gesture that's done in ritual.
Right. This is a stance that's like you just got like your two arms forward, and it's a sign of benediction and consecration. So this is like a blessing. So he's kind of like putting his magical magical blessing over the two lovers that are getting married there.
And opening the way for them.
Yeah, and he's also got a scroll. It's kind of hidden, but it's like in his hands and it's like wrapping around him. And I wonder if this is like the high priestess's scroll that she has, that she's kind of hidden in her, robe there on her artwork. But this, according to Crowley, is, the word intelligence of logos, of creation. And it would contain like the secrets of the spiritual realm, right? Because this is the secrets of magic and all that stuff. So he's kind of wielding this knowledge and throwing it out there with the sign of the emperor. And if you look at the card in a particular way, it almost looks like a UFO abducting people.
Oh, God.
And it's like, it looks cool though, because it's kind of like you got like a holy beam of light like coming from this UFO wizard dude. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. They're getting abducted. They're going to probably be put into like a pod on the ship and make a baby up there through their operation.
Yeah, them UFOs be doing eugenics as well. Let's not forget.
I think it looks like a infinity symbol, like a lemniscate.
Yeah.
So where the Thoth deck has Eros and a hooded figure, this energy was instead represented as an angel with open arms in the older Rider-Waite deck. And many of the older decks show a Cupid-like figure and some kind of priest marrying a couple. So you can see obviously that's the same that Crowley pulled forward with his symbolism. But Waite instead used a seraph. In the Book of Enoch, the seraphim and cherubim are the angels that are closest to the throne of God. And what makes this angel recognizable as a seraph is the crown of fire and the red wings, as the seraphim are known as the burning ones. They're also said to have 6 wings, the number of the lover's card, and the Hebrew word seraph means burning and was also used as a noun meaning serpent. So for more information on the fiery serpents and how they relate to the uraeus and more, I did talk about this a while back in an angel episode. I don't remember what it's called.
Spoiler, it's from Egypt.
It sure is. So the fiery nature of the seraph in the card alludes to the divine fire, love, their passion for doing the will of God, and of course, the fire used for the alchemical wedding that we'll be going into in a little bit. Behind the angel is a sun, which casts a shadow on the angel's robes, and it kind of serves as a warning of the consequences in reaping what you sow, and also unconscious manifestation. The marriage itself is sanctified by the will of God, whose fiery expression of the seraph holds its arms wide open, and that completely bridges the expanse of the card's width from left to right in an all-expansive reach. And this is symbolic of how love knows no bounds, even in its bound and manifested earthly forms.
I love you this much.
What about this white light behind the hermit's head?
Well, there's the sun behind the angel, and this has kind of got some of that same vibes of like a blessing energy over the couple that's getting married in the Rider-Waite deck. In the Thoth deck, I think the equivalent is the light that's behind the head of the hermit, the wizard-looking dude. And I interpret this as being like the light of Kether. So it's kind of the same idea. The power that's flowing from the hermit to bless is actually from the source of everything and God, basically. And that has an infinite amount of potential, just the same as the microcosmic relationship happening on the card.
We were talking a little bit about this off air, but if you apply this idea to science, the splitting of the atom, you get an immense emission of light. And so you could even relate this to the neutron bomb, because, splitting the atom.
Well, you're splitting the opposites, and the energy that results is the fact that you've split the attractors apart. So you're getting the energy between them.
There's a lot of power in those gluons.
I think what Malachor was saying about this white light coming directly from Kether has to do also with how it's hidden from a manifest nature, which in the Rider-Waite deck, it shows symbolically as a cloud obscuring. So while Cupid is blindfolded in a Thoth deck in the Rider-Waite, there's a dark gray cloud obscuring the angel from the garden below. The symbolism really directly says that the workings of the divine is hidden, or at least it is from Adam. Because we can see that Eve is looking up to the heavens, and Adam is looking at Eve. The neutral color of the gray cloud, it's capped with red for passion, and it's like a reflection of the angel's fire on its crests. So often in tarot symbolism, clouds represent transitional phases as well as obscuration. The clouds are related to the mental realm through the element of air, and in turn, of course, the suit of swords. Dark clouds like the one in the card imply a mental division, obscuration, and with the angel above, the transition being divine.
It's like almost like saying through thick and thin, rain or shine, we're married. We love each other.
But also that Adam is kind of dumb. He really needs Eve to communicate with the divine. And you even sort of see that
True.
with the snake like right next to her ear, because that's the ancient symbol of the oracular priestess. As she speaks to God, and oftentimes this power is symbolized by the snake. And
Well, and like how I pointed out, the seraphim were related to serpents, so it's like the seraphim is speaking directly into her ear as a manifest serpent.
It's also clouded in the fact that you referenced the transitional period. So a cloud is water vapor that has transitioned into a gas-like state. Even in science, you see this is a transitional period of an element.
Right. And Eve is able to receive through that.
Yeah, whereas Adam is looking to her, and I feel like not only is he admiring her, but he's also looking to her for a direction. This is psychologically proven. Women tend to be more in touch with intuition. It's really interesting that women serve the role of channeling the divine down into a certain kind of message that Adam is supposed to pick up from her.
remember how we discussed the ancient Greek Pythos, the serpent oracular priestess who would huff the cave gas, or I guess clouds, in order to give voice to the divine, which also is the Golden Dawn title of the card, Children of the Voice Divine, or the voice of the gods, which Eve is capable of speaking with.
You could also really think of Eve in the card as being an incarnate high priestess role in that card, because she's also virginal and receiving of God.
Which would make sense with what Malachor said about the scroll we see from the high priestess being all like wrapped up or woven around the Hierophant, because she's connecting to that knowledge or that wisdom and bringing it down.
The hermit, but yeah, same person, just later in life for some reason.
Well, the hermit does relate to some of the historical stuff we're going to be talking about later with the Rex Nemorensis, etc., which keeps coming up.
So Adam and Eve, they stand unveiled before each other as youthful, innocent, naked figures of love. And the Rider-Waite lovers are symbols of pure love, not yet contaminated by conflict or material desire.
Or pubic hair.
Yeah, why don't they have pubic hair? I don't get it.
Gross.
Because they're virginal, all right?
I guess it's because they're so youthful. That's kind of gross.
I like a big, thick bush of armpit hair. You know what I mean? Like,
So there's 4 golden fruits on the tree behind Eve, and these are the 4 elements among the many other fourfold natures of life. These golden fruits also evoke meaning as Hera's golden apples in the Garden of Hesperides. So as a divine feminine symbol of receptivity, Eve is virginal and innocent in her openness to both the material realm and the divine. Her eyes look up to the angel, and Adam looks to Eve as the masculine active principle of motion, inspired by the Tree of Life behind him, which has fiery divine fruits of instinct. And this instinct is like a knowing that she is the receptive principle that can perceive and receive God. The Tree of Life behind Adam also bears 12 fiery fruits, while the Tree of Knowledge of Good and Evil stands behind Eve. And we see that there's blatant symbolism in their polarities. There's divine fire and manifest fruit. There's fire and earth, eternal life, and the knowledge of death, nakedness, and earthly sin. So Adam and Eve, they made a distinction between themselves and the world, which came as the knowledge of separateness. And that division is what we know as the fall from paradise. So the Lover's card also alludes to a bridge between time and death. And there's Tifereth and Saturn, which we'll talk about later, but the earthly incarnate ego is separated from the eternal, cast down from Eden, and subjected to the duality of manifest existence, with God hidden behind the clouds, basically. This also ties into what was brought up earlier, how we say we fall in love, and falling inherently implies something to fall into, like a receptacle of sorts. And this is inevitably linked to our instinctual drive for wholeness. So rather than love itself being a fall, it's a fall which holds the potential for ascension, which we also see in alchemy and its pairing with the art card. So these trees, they also remind me personally of the dual pillars that we see in doorways of temples, which were originally fashioned after trees.
Asherah pillars, you know, Yahweh's wife.
Yeah, which also happens to be phallic. So we still have dual meanings in these. And We might also think of these two trees as representing how these dual pillars exist in nature. And also because the trees are behind the lovers, it also shows us that they're unconscious motives. But when Adam looks to Eve, he also sees the tree behind her, so he sees her unconscious motives. And trees themselves are symbolic of growth and fruition as well. Might be why, women are considered evil, because man looks to woman and sees the unconscious motive and cries witch.
She's a witch! She turned me into a newt!
Like all beta. Also, the serpent that wraps itself around the tree of knowledge is very caduceus symbolism, and it also reinforces the serpent relationship of the seraph, as I mentioned, as it manifests through experience. So regarding the lovers as a transitional card, the serpent instigates the shedding of old ways, like it sheds its skin. And it does this through knowledge and motion, urging the lovers to ascend up the tree. So we could equate this to the rising of Kundalini, as well as the serpent path working up the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. And between Adam and Eve, we see a mountain in the background of the card, and typically in tarot symbolism, mountains represent challenges. Like, where will this union take them? Up the holy mountain with its many challenges.
In Kabbalistic symbolism, the mountain sometimes represents Tifereth, which is the sphere of the sun, also a prominent symbol in the center of the card.
The holy mountain.
It's almost like a Jack and Jill story, right? Going up the mountain, down the mountain.
Now, in the bottom of the Thoth deck, we see the egg. What is this egg? What does it mean?
Yeah, a lot of people might be familiar with the symbolism of an egg with a snake around it and maybe some wings around an egg or wings in a serpent. They all have like strange meanings, but here we have an egg with a snake around it and some wings. Got a couple things going on in different layers here. Basically, this egg, if you crack it open, the quote-unquote all of creation omelet can be made. This egg represents a unified version of the universe before it was separated, but definitely with the conscious idea that it can be separated and will be separated at some point. It's like existing in all possible states at the same time. It's the active and passive force together. So to reverse this process, to uncrack the egg is very complicated, and that's symbolic of us returning to the union of God, or, the initiatory magical process to meet your HGA and then be a good person for who knows how many decades up in some monastery and meditate, and then you're going to talk to God when you die, right?
Or you just get a free pass with death, no matter who you are.
Yeah, but, this egg is all the little tiny concepts that we use to define and build our reality. Basically.
Have you heard about my friend Humpty Dumpty? He sat on a wall and he had a great fall, and all the horses and all the king's men could never put him back together again.
Poor guy.
But this egg in the art is got shades of black and white and some gray in there, and this is representative of the three upper spheres of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, or the upper supernal triad colors. Again, this is above the abyss, very undefined state of things, but definitely with potential to activate. And like I said, this egg has some wings, and this is almost exactly how you might see Hadith from the Stela of Revealing, for example, or in any other ancient depiction of him. And this is symbolic of Kether in this case, and it has a high amount of spiritual fifth element, love or union energy. That's just the nature of it. With Hadith being there, all of the card's art in the Thoth Tarot is sitting on top of it. And a little bit under him and like around him, I'm forgetting at the moment, but there's a little hidden bow there, and it's drawn exactly in the same way that it sits on the High Priestess lap, and it's Artemis's bow. And again, this links it again with the art card. Yeah, it's underneath. It's kind of together with the wings. But this bow and its arrow is going to be the lance that one of the twins is holding in the Thoth Tarot's art.
Now, if you look at the Thoth version of the Lover's card, it's pretty wild. There's a lot of symbols going on. Prominently, you see what looks to be a white person and a black person who seem to be being wed in holy matrimony, and then flanking them down below looks to be like almost their infant self who are like holding hands with them. And they're all holding a bunch of symbols too.
And one of them's black and one of them's white, the same. And of course, this is the twins. This is Gemini, the sign that's associated with this card. Represents the concept of duality at the same time, with them being like a black and a white pillar that you might see in temples. And it's an interesting note here that they're both kind of surrounded with this different hue of color, and it's like a white halo looking light around them. And it's emanating from the Orphic egg at the bottom. and they're both standing directly on top of this egg with wings here. So it's kind of like they're being protected by God, so to speak. They're divine themselves.
I like how you pointed out this duality. You have the black and white king and queen being married, and then the black and white children holding hands or crossing symbols over each other. And it reminds me a lot of the yin and yang symbol, where the little white kid is in the same area as the black adult, and the little black kid is in the same area as the white adult, because the black is in the white and the white is in the black, just like the yin and yang.
We must look to the cookie.
Right. So the white child is holding a grail or a chalice, and it has a little dove flying downwards on it. And of course, this is the Holy Grail. It's also emanating 5 rays of light. And this is, again, the 5th element, spirit or love. Union, the force that glues all the other elements together. The dove coming down is, again, from Kether, from heaven. All of creation, all of manifest comes down into our 3D world, our manifested world. And in the other hand, where they are holding 4 white roses, this would be Chesed or Hesed. The roses are, of course, a feminine or receptive force when they're displayed this way. And as a Thelemite, you're supposed to understand this is Hiru Parkrat. That's Crowley explains in some equinoxes and various other texts that he writes about on this card.
That's like the younger version of the crowned and conquering Horus, like his little baby self.
Yeah.
So then we have the black child holding a sacred lance of sorts. The lance is phallic, and it also, like I said, doubles as a giant arrow for the bow at the bottom. It's pointing upwards in this case.
Yeah, that bow really is sneaky on the bottom. I didn't even notice it until we did the research.
And in his other hand, I'm assuming it's a him, he's got a club, and this is phallic as well. And this gives him a much more of a Mars association because it's a weapon and it's war, it's a primitive club, it's just a stick basically. And this would make it correspond with Geburah then, because that would be the sphere that Mars is associated with. So this would make it Chesed and Geburah, kind of like the lower octave mom and dad combo. But this sacred black child here would be Rahur Kuit, famously in chapter 3 of the Book of the Law. That's dictated by him, right? That's him talking about how he's going to conquer the world with all his weapons and how powerful he is and all that.
I think it's really fascinating. It looks almost like the 2 children are males, and then the 2 grown-ups being married, they look maybe like both women. So maybe there's this implication that like what little we know as incarnate beings, like how much could we possibly know and understand? Well, it's our souls or our anima that's getting married. Like people are being married on a soul level, with the grown-up woman is the symbol of, the unconscious or the bigger part of ourself. But more so than that, I like how you pointed out that the one with the roses and the chalice is Chesed, because on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, Chesed is conceptualized as an anabolic force. It also collects things to itself to aggregate a bigger thing. So both of those symbols are receptive. And then Geburah is like the opposite. It's warlike, it's purgative, it's catabolic. And so both of those energies are well represented symbolically. And then if you look to the Christian tradition, the Holy Grail and the roses represent eternal life and salvation, while the Holy Lance and club were critical plot points in the crucifixion of Christ, so that represents death. Even the black twin holding fast to the sacred lance might be a symbol of Saint Maurice, the leader of the Theban Legion, who, according to legend, was the first to possess the sacred lance of Longinus. And then the club is a reference to the crucifragium that they didn't do to Christ, where they were going to break his legs so he'd die on the cross.
What am I going to do about my legs, everybody?
It might also be a reference to the nails, which we talked about with the nail or the peg having a hieroglyphic root in the mace.
Yes. So even there, you have this recurring symbol of life on the one side and death on the other, and then them coming together in some way.
And even on the Tree of Life, those 2 spheres are at the same level, at the same height, but they're on the 2 separate sides of the tree.
I feel like this is also referencing fixation as an alchemical process that will happen later.
And it's really interesting too, because it tends to be that you're attracted to what you lack. I was reading about nutrition today. Apparently, I don't know if you've heard of pica or any of these other neurological disorders where you crave to eat some kind of food. It has to do with a lack of a nutrient. So this is a balancing force that we're talking about.
Likewise, to bring up the color of their skin once again, if we're going to symbolize the white person in the couple as Hakma, that would be the light of the stars. And Hakma, meaning wisdom, might refer to the Sophia, where Saturn can be related to, from Binah, with Osiris, who is famously a black god.
If you think of both of the children too as being like the underlying roots, the babe within, I think it makes sense too that they both have this white light aura around them.
So like we said, there's also in somewhat of a higher octave, right? We have a black king and a white queen. The king has a gold crown and it's 5-pointed. So again, that's Gebura, sphere's number. And this is representative of the sun. And then we have the queen with a silver crown and it has the cross and the orb. And we talked about that in, what was the tarot episode?
Empress.
In the Empress episode. And this is representative of, again, Hesed or Chesed. And the silver against the gold is representative of the moon. So we have gold crown and silver crown, sun and moon, Chesed, Gebura. That's their relationship there, you know, just again personified in what they're adorned with. And they're also wearing these cool fancy robes that got like the white shag lining with like the black dots on it. I'm not sure exactly.
Oh yeah, it's like a special kind of a weasel.
Ermine.
Yeah.
Get the ermine cloak, like it said in Eyes Wide Shut.
Which is also about twins, lovers, pairs, the conscious and the unconscious, the high priest,
marriage,
etc.,
lovers.
Yeah.
You know, Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman. That's the lovers card.
You don't remember me, do you?
So the queen has bees on her robe. And in a previous episode, I said this is fertility and high amounts of energy, like a bustling city or a buzzing hive.
And snakes on the king, right?
Yeah.
Well, bees are feminine by nature because they have a queen and most of the workers are female.
On the king, he has lemniscate snakes pattern. So they're kind of like an infinity symbol, almost like Ouroboros biting its own tail, but in an infinity symbol rather than just a circle.
I literally saw this symbol today when I was driving home. Really weird.
Right. And it's a symbol of the cycle of life and death, the infinity sign that is those two circles coming together at some point.
Two fools falling in love, the two zeros coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And both of their robes are an orange color. And this is like a relationship between the color yellow and Kether. This is like a unifying color here in a way for these particular two individuals to be wearing on their robes.
You know, there's a bit of a fun connection too with the mythologies and card symbolism going on with the bees as well, because there's a myth regarding Eros where he stuck his hand into a beehive to steal the honey and got stung by the bees. And he went crying to his mommy Aphrodite and proceeded to describe the bees that stung him as being snakes with wings. And he wondered how something so small could hurt so much. And then Aphrodite pointed out how he too is small, just like the bees, and can also cause great pain with his arrows. Since Eros, bees, and snakes are an obvious theme in this card, this myth also hints that the motif on the robes of the king and queen are snakes and snakes with wings, respectively, which also the winged snakes tie the lover's card back to the fiery winged seraphim and their relationship to the winged Uraeus cobras, the union of Upper and Lower Egypt, and all of the symbolism of the uniting of pairs that they suggest. To unravel that even further, it evokes a bunch of meaning from the previous cards of Empress and Emperor, pulling them into the same card, suggesting that undertaking of becoming one of the sedge and bee symbolism.
And then what about the red lion and the white eagle?
Right. So we have Leo, right? And it is red, which is a fire personification in an animal. There's an interesting thing here is that he's got his tail going through his legs like it's a big phallus. And this tail has 5 kinks in it, like 5 little split off points. And again, this is Gebura, the 5th sphere on the Tree of Life associated with Mars. And on the other side of the card, we got the white eagle. And between these two animals and these particular colors, there's a lot more we're going to talk about in the art card because they show up again over there. But the eagle is sometimes depicted as an alternate version of Scorpio. So we have Scorpio and water here. We got a white eagle that's water and Scorpio against a red lion that's Leo and fire. This white eagle has 4 tail feathers. Again, this is Chesed, the 4th sphere. So again, this polarizing force of unifying for alchemy. This is one step in that alchemical process, and we're definitely going to get into that stuff in the second half. Generally, throughout the whole card, since there's so much of this Gebura and Chesed, we see a white hue, and this is to remind us of Tifereth. Tifereth sits between Geburah and Chesed. It's balanced and echoing in the crowns of the royals and in other various ways that we've talked about, with the red lion and the white eagle. And again, this is the major theme of this card is unifying these opposing forces, the lovers, divine marriage. All that stuff is just repeated a lot on this card.
We went quite a bit in depth too with the meanings of the lion and the eagle in the Muse episode as far as how they relate to alchemy. But to summarize, it's red lion, sulfur, white eagle, mercury, or virgin's milk.
And this recurring theme of Chesed and Geburah, the 4 and the 5, makes sense because it's the balance between these two spheres which create the beautiful, harmonious state of Tifereth, the child of these two spheres. But if you'd like to hear more about our Kabbalistic rantings, the mythology behind the Lover's card, Castor and Pollux, the Roman god Janus, Apocalypse Now, Jungian twin archetypes,
alchemy, and of course Egypt,
and most importantly, the Hebrew letter association of Zayin for the sword, hieroglyphic roots of Zayin,
and sex, of course.
Maybe some weird Crowley quotes.
Please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you this extended episode, but our entire library of extended episodes. I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art, and you'll get the keys to our Discord server, where you can discuss all the Kabbalistic symbolism you want anytime, day or night, because we have nothing better to do than talk about magic.
And Diablo 4.
Yes, and come play Diablo 4 with us. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.